Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC Vegas 58, Rafael dos Anjos versus Rafael Fiziev just ended, and this is going to be my post-fight reaction. I'm mainly going to discuss the main event, but I'm also going to touch on other notable fights on the card. UFC Vegas 58 as a whole kind of left a lot to be desired. I mean, this wasn't the most exciting card. It was kind of a little bit of a letdown, but I really believe this main event saved the card. It was a spectacular performance by Rafael Fiziev, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But this was a fight that we were supposed to get in late February. We were supposed to get, at UFC 272 in early March, and it kept getting rescheduled. We finally got it in July. And one thing I love about MMA, and particular fights like this, I love getting questions answered, and this was the toughest test of Rafael Fiziev's career, and he went out there and he passed it with flying colors. I mean, he answered so many questions in this fight. First off, going into this fight, my official prediction, you can watch it on my channel, I thought Rafael Fiziev would win by third round TKO, and the reason I thought that is I just thought he was a superior striker. I thought RDA is getting up there in age. I think Fiziev has better reaction time. I think he has better speed. I think he has better striking. I think he has better power. And I think he had good enough takedown defense to stuff the takedowns of RDA. I mean, RDA in his prime had trouble getting Tony Ferguson down. Tony Ferguson has some of the worst takedown defense we've ever seen. He's just had an issue throughout his entire career being taken down. And I know RDA is a good grappler, but I just thought Fiziev, even though he hasn't proven it at the highest level, he hasn't fought a guy that's really looking to take him down nonstop, I just thought the takedown defense would be good enough to stuff the takedowns. I think he might run into a little bit of a slow start because he's worried about the takedowns of RDA, but I thought as the fight went on, I thought he would get a little bit more comfortable and look for openings, get the timing of RDA, clip him in the third round, and put him to sleep. That's not what happened. Rafael Fiziev finished him in the fifth round. Who would have guessed that? And it started to look like just maybe, that the tide was starting to turn in this fight. You had the first three rounds. I thought Rafael Fiziev clearly won the first three rounds. He was just landing the better shots on the feet. RDA was clinching up with him, but he was doing absolutely nothing with it. And eventually Fiziev would work his way out of certain positions. RDA would press him up against the fence, look for takedowns, but they just weren't there. Fiziev showed excellent takedown defense in this fight. The first and second round were clear for Rafael Fiziev. The third round was kind of close. RDA started landing some better shots on the feet. And then he got one takedown in the third round where he kind of, caught Fiziev slipping, got his back, had him up against the fence, and then kicked his legs out from underneath him. But even once he got him down, his butt was on the ground like a seated position against the cage. He popped right back up. There was no control time. There was no damage for RDA. I thought Fiziev landed the better strikes. I thought he won rounds 1 through 3. Then round 4 came around. And in round 3, a little bit towards the second half, Fiziev started to look like he was getting a little bit tired. And it's hard to gauge in 5-round fights sometimes, especially when you have a fighter who hasn't fought 5 rounds. Sometimes they might be conserving their energy, and that's why they might look not that great in maybe a third round or so, or late second round, because maybe they don't want to be too explosive because they're conserving their energy because they don't want to get finished in the later rounds. But I was worried about Fiziev's cardio after that 4th round, because in the 4th round, RDA was landing some good shots. I think that was the round where he landed the flying knee, then a nasty left hand, and he had some clinch position within this round as well. And I thought RDA actually landed the better shots on the feet. He had the clinch position, control position, and I think that RDA took the 4th round. I think it could go either way, but I thought RDA had the 4th round, and it looked like Fiziev was starting to get tired. And then from my point of view, I was looking, what are the judges thinking? And I was thinking the judge could definitely give RDA the 3rd round, even though I didn't think he won the 3rd round. So then you start looking at that. It could be 2-2 going into the 5th round. I was like, oh no. I was just waiting for another, a close 5th round and then another controversial decision. Well, the 5th round comes out and Rafael Fiziev puts that all to rest. There's not going to be a decision. He does a jumping knee that doesn't land, followed by a left hand that drops RDA, hurts him badly, follows him to the ground, and lands a nasty right hand that puts him out. Mark Smith, I always complain about the refs. I always complain about Mark Smith. Mark Smith did an excellent job. At first, I thought it was early. On my stream, I said, oh, that was a hair early. But Mark Smith jumped in at the perfect time. When you watch the replay, if you watch the replay and you pay attention, The right hand put Rafael dos Anjos out cold. It was picture perfect on the chin. When he followed him to the ground, he landed the right hand. He put RDA to sleep. It was a picture perfect stoppage by the ref, which we don't see too often. If you don't think it was a perfect stoppage, go back and rewatch it. He was clearly out. Rafael Fiziev putting out RDA. What a performance. I think RDA has been TKO'd maybe twice in his career. I know he got TKO'd against Eddie Alvarez, and I think there was, I think the Jeremy Stevens fight. I could be wrong, but it's not like RDA is a guy that's getting chinned left and right. And he's fought the elite of the elite at 155 and 170. And Rafael Fiziev goes out there and chins him, and not only chins him, but does it in the 5th round. And this just answers so many questions about Rafael Fiziev, because we know now he has elite level takedown defense. We already knew that he has elite level striking. And now he can put it together against a guy as well-rounded as Rafael dos Anjos. This guy is a serious contender in the lightweight division. And when I first started my channel, I remember I did a live stream early. I started my channel like a little over a year ago. Somebody asked me, who's somebody that's not in the rankings that I think could be a future title holder? And one of my answers was Rafael Fiziev. And now looking at him and the way he stacks up with that top 5 of the division, Rafael Fiziev is going to be tough to beat because he has some of the best striking I've seen, and he has great takedown defense. And there's not a Khabib Nurmagomedov level wrestler at the top of the division. I think Fiziev can beat Gaethje. And next up, that's what I would like to see. I want to see Rafael Fiziev versus Justin Gaethje. I think that would be an amazing fight. And if Fiziev is able to beat Gaethje, I think he's probably earned the next title shot out of Oliveira and Islam once they fight and we actually get a champion, because technically Charles Oliveira is not the champion, even though he really is, and we all know that. But Fiziev, just to go out there and do this performance against a guy like RDA, who's an absolute legend. And I know there's going to be people out there that are going to say RDA's washed, RDA's old, this wasn't a big one. This was a massive win. RDA is still a legit elite level lightweight. He has good grappling. He has good jiu-jitsu. He has good striking. And not only that, just Fiziev just showed how well-rounded he is. We knew how good of a striker he was. He was able to out-muscle RDA in some clinch positions in this fight. Rafael Fiziev at some points would clinch up and push RDA against the fence. When RDA would look for a takedown and fail miserably on the takedown, and they would end up clinched up against the fence, Rafael Fiziev would reverse the position and push RDA against the fence. And we already know Fiziev is a dynamic striker. He was landing nasty body kicks. He was landing teep kicks to the body. He didn't mix in the leg kicks as much as I thought he would in this fight. But either way, the hands were looking good. The hands were fast. They were accurate. The only thing that RDA really landed in this fight successfully, he landed a lot of good body kicks on Rafael Fiziev. So maybe that's something he needs to work on. But there was a couple times throughout this fight that Rafael dos Anjos had perfectly timed takedowns. They weren't telegraphed. Rafael Fiziev was coming forward, throwing shots, and dos Anjos would just time a perfect takedown. And there was probably 2 or 3 of them throughout the fight that were just perfect timing, and Rafael Fiziev was stuffing every single one of them. So if you can't get Rafael Fiziev down, how are you going to beat him? Because he's one of the best strikers in the division. And it's just, there's so many interesting matchups now, because you have a potential Justin Gaethje matchup. You have a potential Islam Makhachev matchup. You have a potential Charles Oliveira matchup. And I'm curious, can Charles Oliveira, can Islam Makhachev get him down? And if they're not able to get him down, how does that fight play out on the feet? Because, the speed of Fiziev, the accuracy of Fiziev, I think he's entering his prime right now. The takedown defense, the strength in the clinch, he's going to be a lot of trouble for a lot of guys within the division. And he showed it against a guy like RDA, who I get is aging, but is still one of the best fighters at 155. And shout out to RDA. This guy never turns down a tough fight. He was scheduled to fight Islam Makhachev multiple times. It didn't come together, whether it was Islam's fault, RDA's fault. There was a couple mix and mashes of who pulled out here and there. But either way, RDA has been fighting the toughest guys for over 10 years. He's been in the UFC since before I was even a fan. And for Fiziev to come out in the toughest test of his career and just go out there, and there was really no blemishes on this performance. The stamina was a massive question mark going into this fight for Rafael Fiziev. And even though maybe he looked a little bit tired in that 3rd and 4th round, it wasn't something where he just looked exhausted. People said, oh, Fiziev was getting tired in the third round of the Bobby Green fight and, his cardio is an issue. I said it was because of the output against Bobby Green. That's why he was so tired. I think he came out, he measured his output. He didn't throw a lot of volume in this fight, but he still threw decent combinations in this fight. It's not like he was super conservative. And he still showed he had finishing ability in the 5th round. An amazing killer instinct because he clipped him with that left hand. He closed the distance by jumping in with the knee. Then he landed that nasty left hand that hurt RDA badly. And then he showed the killer instinct. There's too many times, we saw it on this card, where one fighter rocks the other fighter and then don't follow him to the ground and finish him, or just don't even look for the finish at all. Just goes back to kind of settling into the fight. Fiziev just impressed me so much tonight because, it's easy to do these types of things. I mean, not easy to do, but it doesn't look as impressive when you go out there and stop a Renato Moicano, when you stop a Brad Riddell. It's good, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying either one of those guys were easy wins, but I'm saying to then go out there and finish a guy like Rafael dos Anjos is massive for Fiziev, and I really think the UFC has an endless amount of amazing matchups. There's been some back and forth online between Conor McGregor and Rafael Fiziev. Book that fight. I don't think the UFC does that in a million years because Fiziev is so dangerous, but I can't wait to see where he goes from here in the lightweight division. And he is going to be a tough lightweight fighter to beat. And there's so many killers within this division. I mean, I cannot believe how stacked the lightweight division. The only division that I think is better than lightweight right now is bantamweight. Bantamweight is stacked top to bottom. But Rafael Fiziev proved, we already kind of knew, but still he hadn't had that elite test yet. He proved he belongs in the upper part of the lightweight division. And he proved, I think he's one fight away from a potential title shot. Let's say he fights Justin Gaethje and he goes out there and finishes Justin Gaethje. That's going to be a tough ask. Justin Gaethje is an elite level striker himself, but he's getting up there in age. He's taking a lot of damage. He's not super technical a lot of the time. But that fight would be amazing. But if Fiziev could go out there and stop a guy like Gaethje, who's going to deny him the fact that he might earn a title shot off a win like that? And I think that's the fight the UFC should make next. Moving on to the co-main event. And again, you did not have a lot of spectacular performances on UFC Vegas 58. But in the co-main event, you had Caio Borralho versus Armen Petrosyan. And in this fight, basically Petrosyan just got out-grappled. Caio was able to take him down, control him on the ground, get his back. He was looking for a submission, looking for a rear naked choke, but he really never got particularly close. Petrosyan didn't show the best takedown defense. In the 3rd round, he started to kind of come back a little bit. And at one point, I think he got up and Caio was laying on the ground on his back, and he was brutally chopping the legs. Caio was laying on his back, hands behind his head, and Petrosyan was standing up, just brutally kicking his legs. And the referee was constantly like, work the finish, work the finish. He is brutally chopping his legs for, I'd say, about 30 seconds or so. And the ref eventually stands him up. I get it. I kind of hate that position as well, where they're either up or they're down. I get it. We hate that position a lot. But these referees will watch guys clinch up and do nothing for 2 minutes, and they will do absolutely nothing. But God forbid, one guy is down on the ground, the other guy's standing up, kicking his legs. The ref just, for whatever reason, I think it was Mike Beltran in this fight, just was like, no, I can't watch this. Work for the finish. Dude, he's kicking his legs brutally here. And I get it. It's not the best position. But how are you not going to allow that, but you're going to allow the clinch position where nothing is going on for a long period of time? But basically in this fight, maybe, you could give Petrosyan maybe the 3rd round. He started to come on a little bit stronger, but I don't really think he won the 3rd round. The standing kicks could have got it. I think the 3rd round could have went either way. But the story of the fight was Caio Borralho's grappling. He took him down the first 2 rounds, controlled him there basically the entire round, had his back, didn't do a lot of damage, softened him up, then would look for a rear naked choke, but it would never get particularly close. Wasn't a particularly exciting fight. Moving down the card, and this just shows how stacked the bantamweight division is. The fact that these are 2 unranked bantamweights. You had Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Said Nurmagomedov. And this fight, even though it was arguably a 30-27 for Said Nurmagomedov, this was a great fight. First round, I really thought Said was really going to take over in this fight. He was landing very good kicks. He just really couldn't miss a lot of the strikes that he was throwing. And Douglas Silva de Andrade was just moving forward no matter what. just moving forward no matter what. He was looking to land combinations, but he just couldn't find the range and the timing to land on Saeed Nurmagomedov. The second round was more of the same, and they never showed a replay, so I can't say for sure. The second round was a little bit closer. I think, Douglas Silva really started to move forward. He was landing some good shots. But in the second round, I think Douglas Silva de Andrade at the end of the round dropped Nurmagomedov. I think it was like a spinning back fist or something along those lines. And I really think that second round could have been stolen by Douglas Silva de Andrade, but I probably would still give it to Saeed. But I had to see the replay, and they did not show us that replay. But it was more kind of the same outside of that, maybe a little bit closer in the second round. Then in the third round, you had some really nasty kicks by Saeed. He was keeping the range very well. It was hard for Douglas Silva to really just find him and land shots, even though, he was clearly losing this fight. He was still coming forward and looking to do damage, but he was just constantly out of range. I think it was in the third round, and this is another thing I want to complain about with Saeed Nurmagomedov. The guy was just spinning way too much, and a lot of them weren't getting close. He was leaving himself in bad position. I think in the third round, he did a spin. Douglas Silva de Andrade grabbed his back, then suplexed him to the ground, but didn't do a whole lot with it. Saeed was able to work back to the feet. And I think, maybe you give, Douglas Silva de Andrade maybe the second if he did drop him. But the third round, I think Saeed landed. He just outstruck him. He maintained the distance. I think that was the round where he got taken down, but he didn't do a lot with it. I think this might even been where, I can't remember 100%, but I think Douglas Silva may have stood up and Saeed was laying there and he was kicking his legs in this round, but I can't remember for 100% certainty. But this fight just showed how good the bantamweight division is. Saeed Nurmagomedov, I'd love to see him against a ranked opponent next, but he showed some flaws here. He started to get a little bit tired towards the end of the fight. I think he relies a little bit too much on the flashy techniques, relies too much on the spinning techniques. I mean, if you end up giving up your back by spinning like that to a guy like Aljamain Sterling, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, matching him up with the champion, but if you give up your back to guys like that, you're going to end up paying for it by getting submitted or being dominated for an entire round or something along those lines. So I still think there's a lot of improvements he can make, but the kicks of Saeed have looked super impressive. He's basically landing them at will. They're super powerful to the body, to the legs, to the head. He has a great question mark kick. I think at one point in this fight, he threw a kick that was kind of to the body, but it was kind of like Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling, where he landed the knee to the face of Douglas Silva. And, I mean, Saeed's kicks just looked like the elite of the elite at 135. Moving down the card, I'm definitely not talking about the Garrett Vanderaa versus Chase Sherman fight. Just low-level MMA. Chase Sherman gets the KO. There's nothing much to say about that. I think Garrett Vanderaa won the first two rounds. But low-level MMA, never going to be contenders, even in the less-than-stacked heavyweight division. Moving down the card, Michael Johnson versus Jamie Mullarkey. This is a fight I really want to talk about. Because in this first round, Michael Johnson dropped Jamie Mullarkey badly with the 1-2. And he did not capitalize on it. He went down. It was like he was looking for maybe a guillotine of some sort. And he just hung out there for a minute doing no damage. And supposedly he was complaining that Jamie Mullarkey was grabbing his gloves. But either way, he had no sense of urgency. And he basically let Jamie Mullarkey recover. Now, I thought Michael Johnson won the pretty much vast majority of round number one. And then he had the drop where he almost finished him with the two-piece, dropped him down, and then didn't do nothing with it. Towards the tail end of this round, Jamie Mullarkey dropped Michael Johnson. He landed some follow-up shots, but I think this was in the last minute or so. So I clearly gave round one to Michael Johnson, okay? I thought it was a clear round for Michael Johnson. I have to go back and rewatch it, but I think it was a clear round for him. The second round, it looked like Jamie Mullarkey was going to stop Michael Johnson. It looked like Johnson had never recovered from getting rocked at the tail end of round one. And Mullarkey was just picking him apart. Michael Johnson's footwork just disappeared overnight and just was not moving well. He was getting pieced up by shots. Jamie Mullarkey was just swarming him. I think there was a couple times in the clinch. He was blasting him with knees, blasting him with elbows. And it looked like the writing was on the wall. Michael Johnson, typical inconsistent performance where he looked so great early on, but then he gets stopped in the second round. Everyone says, oh, well, that's Michael Johnson. He can be, some nights he can be the elite of the elite at lightweight. Other nights, he loses to Jamie Mullarkey, a.k.a. Eustace from the Courage the Cowardly Dog. And in this fight, I really thought that's what was going to happen. Michael Johnson somehow survives the onslaught from the second round. It was a clear round for Jamie Mullarkey. He was brutalizing Michael Johnson from bell to bell at the second round. The third round, Michael Johnson comes out, looks like he was in the first round. Was piecing up Jamie Mullarkey. Jamie Mullarkey landed some good shots. I think what happened is Jamie Mullarkey got really tired trying to finish Michael Johnson in the second round. And I think then Michael Johnson then kind of regained, composure after being rocked at the end of the first round. In the third round, Michael Johnson looked back to what he was in the first round, using footwork, landing good combinations. And I think Michael Johnson clearly won the third round. I really don't think it's up for debate. And I very rarely throw the word robbery out there. I think Michael Johnson clearly won rounds 1 and round 3, and I don't see how the judges gave it to Jamie Mullarkey. I think this is an absolute robbery, and I get it. We say, oh, well, this was a kind of a close fight. No, it was a competitive fight. I don't think it was a close fight. I think Michael Johnson won the first and the third. He was winning the majority of the first round, and he rocked Jamie Mullarkey, and Jamie Mullarkey rocked him. So who do you give it to? Definitely give it to Michael Johnson, considering he was winning the vast majority, and he also rocked him as well. So those can cancel each other out for all I care. And I just really believe that, people say, oh, well, this was a close fight and people are claiming robbery. I think this is one of the rare instances, and again, I have to go back and rewatch it, that this may have very well been a robbery. And what sucks about this is the UFC pays guys to show up and then they pay them a win bonus. It's half and half. So if you make $100,000 to show up, you also get a $100,000 win bonus, essentially. And now Michael Johnson goes home with half of his money because of the judges, the incompetent judging. And I really think this is something that is kind of destroying the sport. I mean, there's nothing worse than watching a fight. You feel like you clearly know who's the better fighter. You clearly know who won. And then the judges just give it to whoever they want to give it to. It's basically a coin flip at this point. And, comment down below and let me know who you thought won this fight. But I think this was a travesty. I get it. Michael Johnson's not going to go anywhere within the lightweight division. Jamie Mullarkey's not really going to go anywhere in the lightweight division. But it's just sad to see a guy go out there and perform and then he doesn't get the win. Moving down the card, one more fight that I'm going to touch on this card, Cody Brundage versus Tresean Gore. I don't know what to say about this fight. I mean, Tresean Gore gets brutally KO'd in the first round. He was looking good, slamming leg kicks, doing very well. He was pressuring forward. But Cody Brundage, he tried to start grappling early. I think he had Tresean Gore's back against the fence early on. It's hard to remember that fight because it was so early on in the card. But Tresean Gore was able to get away from that position, get it back to standing. He was pressing forward. He gets clipped badly and then followed to the ground, full mounted, and then pounded out. He was out cold. Now he's 0-2 in the UFC. I don't know. Maybe he gets cut from the UFC at this point. I don't know if he belongs in the UFC. It's sad to say. But now he's lost 2 in a row. He gets KO'd by Cody Brundage. I thought Tresean Gore would win this fight. I thought his nasty power, his nasty leg kicks, his athleticism, his speed would be what won him this fight. But Cody Brundage came out, and showed that he belongs, I guess. And he put out Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess he's not super defensively responsible, but I guess you can just get clipped. So maybe the UFC gives him one more chance. The leg kicks of Tresean Gore are absolutely filthy. But the resilience of Cody Brundage, because I also think that early takedown attempt had Gore thinking about the takedowns, and that's why he wasn't putting out a lot of volume. He was kind of worried about the takedowns, and Cody Brundage ended up capitalizing on that and landing that nasty punch that just put him down, and then he just capitalized on it. I talk about it all the time. There's times where people rock other fighters, and then they don't go for the kill. Michael Johnson in the first round of the Jamie Mullarkey fight didn't go for the kill, and it ended up costing him by a terrible decision. Cody Brundage hurt him badly and capitalized on it. Went down there, got in full mount, and pounded him out for the win in a fight that I think a lot of people thought he was going to lose. Outside of that, I mean, there's not really a lot to talk about. David Onama had a late notice replacement against Garrett Armfield. He went out there, beat him via second round submission. This fight was kind of sloppy. I had higher expectations for David Onama, but, against a short notice opponent who you fought before, who supposedly you were a training partner before, I guess, it's an okay performance. But that fight was kind of competitive, but it was just a lot of sloppy striking in that fight, and I wasn't particularly impressed. Some people, the Antonio Shevchenko fight versus Cortney Casey, some say it was a robbery. I mean, this fight wasn't. It was an awful fight. I mean, I'm not going to die on that hill for anyone. I thought Shevchenko won rounds 1 and 2. But I think that pretty much does it. This was my UFC Vegas 58 post-fight. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.